So our last speaker today, or at least in this panel, is Robin Smith. He's a project officer of the European Commission at the Joint Research Center. And since 2012, he's leading one of the ISA actions actually on a reusable INSPIRE reference platform, which is called ARENA. So today he will talk about how this ARENA is implementing and helping public administrations implement the INSPIRE directive. Robin.
Thanks very much, Jebby, and good afternoon to everyone. And I would also like to extend my thanks to Digit and colleagues for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to try and play with this as well and not skip through my slides too quickly. So, INSPIRE, you've heard it mentioned this morning a couple of times, and I'll try and give you a little bit of an explanation as to what that means. I'll try to give you a sense about reusability in assets and solutions that we've been developing under the ARENA ISA action and other activities. And I'm going to give you two perspectives on this concept of assets. I'm going to try to give it from the ISA perspective and the INSPIRE perspective to explain where we are now, as we take the opportunity through our work with Digit to try to bring geospatial data interoperability closer to the rest of e-government. Now, it might be useful for me to define the word asset before I go further, because it's not always a commonly understood term. So in general terms, I could say it's a resource that is going to produce some benefits in the future. So let's try and hold that idea in mind as I go through this presentation. So first, INSPIRE and policy. So INSPIRE is a framework directive, and it was quite particular at the time when it was defined, because it was going to be a way to do some forms of technical interoperability with creating general principles through the framework directive, and then follow that up with regulations to specify certain concepts, and build that further with more flexible technical guidelines. And the consequence of this is we're able to get good practices already coming through the legislation, but the other sense is, well, we have an opportunity to show what results will look like. But at the time of its design, we didn't necessarily say what paths would we follow to achieve this. And one of the things we're doing through ARENA and our new activity, as I'll explain shortly, is try to help people share some of those practices and processes and methodologies in a common way, to trying to explain to each other how we're going to achieve the results we're looking for. Now, INSPIRE is essentially a spatial data infrastructure. It's a pan-European cross-border and cross-sector one, because it's not just for the environment. It has many components that relate to many activities. Now, obviously, it's very much focused around spatial data. It's going to be using technologies, but a spatial data infrastructure also very much involves policies, the practices I just mentioned, and a key element of this is the people. So thousands of experts across Europe came together to help define the data models that were going to be used in INSPIRE, with a basis towards supporting environmental and other policies, and make INSPIRE reusable from the very beginning. These core models allow you to build applications in whichever element you want to build in, based on INSPIRE. So INSPIRE provides a core to share geographical information and power a range of applications by design. And the other point I would like to emphasize here is INSPIRE was created with, is being implemented with, and is being maintained with the member states. It's an ongoing collaborative process to try to work together to help share geographical information in Europe. Now, I would like to now make some hook to the e-government side, and essentially draw to your attention two actions. Firstly, from the e-government action plan, Action 19 says we must accelerate the deployment and take-up of the INSPIRE directive data infrastructure. And as of last week, in the Interoperability Action Plan of the new EIF, Action 17, as a key interoperability enabler, INSPIRE should further support the implementation and enhancement of the INSPIRE directive through the use of geospatial data in digital public services. I'm delighted to see these kind of statements, partly because it gives me the opportunity to bring our experience in trying to achieve data interoperability in Europe and have conversations alongside colleagues from e-government too. Sharing these experiences are very important, and I appreciate again the invitation to talk to you today. The other aspect from the new IF that's worth mentioning is that INSPIRE has been recognized as a good example of a domain interoperability framework. So although I would again emphasize that we have cross-sector opportunities and assets to share with everybody, it also has a certain way of working. So we're a good example of touching different interoperability levels, and we're also an example in trying to choose and use INSPIRE in lots of different cases, and that's what I'd like to talk to you more about now. So under the European Union Location Framework ISA action and under ARENA that I've been looking after, we've really been trying to explore the different dimensions of interoperability that our colleagues in Digit have been leading on and try and add that location or geospatial component and make things more reusable from the outset. And as of this year, we've really launched activities in our new ISA² action called ISA, European Location Interoperability Solutions for E-Government, where a lot of the experience that we have from EULF and ARENA is going to be built on and try to create a knowledge service around our understanding of interoperability. I don't have time to go into details, but I just want to mention 3 examples of the kind of work that we have been doing that we will build on. So we have created open source solutions, like our registry, which is a tool for sharing reference codes. We need that for INSPIRE implementation, but you can use that in lots of applications. We've also been doing experiments of how we exchange these reference codes and extend them across member states. We're also, because of the investments in INSPIRE in interoperability and semantic assets, we've created RDF representations of how INSPIRE data could be used, not just for GIS technologies, but also linked data technologies. And last one is we have been investing in GeoDCAT AP with colleagues from the ISA unit in the CEMIC action to try and reuse INSPIRE metadata for open data catalogs in GeoDCAT AP. Again, I don't have time to go into details, but you can find lots of information about this on JoinUp. So I want to give you a last couple of ideas about where we're going with this. So just basically speaking, in terms of all the different interoperability levels, ARENA and INSPIRE offer a lot. So first of all, of course, legal interoperability is there because we have the directive. And we are looking at how organizational assets and governance activities could be better modeled. Because I think that organizational interoperability is something we should explore beyond surface level agreements. We produce lots of different kinds of assets that relate to semantics, because that's maybe where the most wealth is in INSPIRE. And I've mentioned some examples already. But if I take one more example of the code list that we produce, that people are going to insert into their INSPIRE data sets to try and align the semantic interoperability, then that's a good example of where we're touching lots of different levels at once. Because from those code lists that come from our regulations, we share them through our registry software and provide them to you through open services. So that was more maybe the EIF perspective. If I just briefly mention that we're trying to be very concrete about some of the outputs as well as INSPIRE and the underlying processes that are involved. And the purpose of this slide is to show you that as well as all the different interoperability assets that are out there, there are INSPIRE assets that are available for you to share and reuse. So we have lessons to be learned about data interoperability. We have methodologies that you can find out about. As I mentioned with the code list, we have reference data that you can use in e-government applications. There's methods and approaches to modeling data that should be extended for specific applications. And perhaps most importantly, INSPIRE is there to help share data so it can be reused. And just for completeness, I would also make a short reference here to recommendation 9 of the EIF that talks about data portability. And I think we have a lot to contribute to discussions about how we can make data more reusable because of our understanding from INSPIRE. So this is practically my last slide. I would just like to share with you the notion, at least, that INSPIRE in itself is quite reusable, and that we should be reusing and sharing these data services that INSPIRE is putting in place for a range of applications, and not just geospatial ones. INSPIRE in general as well can help to transform public administrations and be a point of collaboration, because it's not just about maps, it's about the data in the organizations that could be associated with those maps. In doing so as well, we offer opportunities not just for public administrations, but also for businesses. There's a great wealth in geographical information, and we should be exploring how that can contribute to the data economy. Not only that, there are opportunities to extend INSPIRE in terms of its use in different legal contexts, and this is also our contribution to better regulation. And these last 3 points are some of the focus of the new ISA² action. So just to be a little bit more concrete in closing, these aren't just concepts. We've been progressively trying to build representations of this information online through the INSPIRE knowledge base. And I share with you some examples of how we're exchanging ideas of best practice in terms of implementation and data modeling through INSPIRE thematic clusters, sharing recipes of how to do INSPIRE through the INSPIRE in Practice platform, giving you access to the data objects that INSPIRE contains, not through 4,000 pages of technical guidelines, but through a little search engine that goes through an object catalog that we've created. And lastly, as I mentioned before, there's the INSPIRE registry. Our work this year is trying to put that all together in a cohesive knowledge service. So that's it from me. My time's up. Obrigado. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, all.